Welcome to integrating Algolia Recommend on my blog. I am Raymond Camden. I am a senior developer evangelist at Adobe. I work in our Acrobat and PDF APIs as well as Firefly APIs as well. Now, also about me, I blog at raymondcamden.com, and I've been blogging for a very, very long time, over 20 years now, which is kind of crazy to think about. In that time frame, I've gone through a couple of different ways of blogging. I initially had a homegrown solution built in Cold Fusion. I did WordPress for a little while and switched to Jekyll and static websites. And currently, I'm running on 11. Now, my blog, yeah, having been around for so long, has quite a few blog posts, over 6,000. In fact, I think over 6,500 or so. That is a lot of content, and I have already turned to Algolia in the past to kind of help me manage all that content. So today I'm going to talk about another way that Algolia can help me out. The recommend product. I'm going to talk about what it is. I'm going to talk about why you would want to use it. And then I'm going to show you how to use it, or specifically how I'm using it on my website. So, what is recommend? So it is a service that returns a list of content related to one item. That probably sounds kind of obvious, but if you've ever been to an e-commerce site, you have definitely seen this. So you'll be looking at the product, and that site will be like, "Hey, while you're buying this, I bet you would also like to buy these other products as well." So it is typically product focused, but you can absolutely use it with content as well, as I'm going to show. So recommend is part of the same free tier covered by search, which is really, really nice. The free tier by Algolia is incredibly generous. Like the search product, it is available via an API, SDKs, instantsearch.js as well. And it's really kind of helpful for, let's say thinking about products that something is out of stock, you could recommend other products. Or if you just want to think about, highlighting things that are pretty popular, that's another way that you could use it as well. You can find out more about the product at the link below. So, why do I care about this? I don't have any products, right? So, like I mentioned, I have a large collection of content. Again, over 6,500 of them. And one of the things that I found is that a lot of my website traffic, people will come in, they'll read an article, and like that's it. They're one and done. So what I was kind of thinking is that this could help people find content, related to what they're looking at now. Maybe my blog post wasn't helpful enough, and they need a little bit more help. And I thought recommend could help there, and just in general, being able to surface more content, just more things that may be of interest to the people visiting my blog. I thought that would be kind of great. I'll also say it's great for me to see things that I've forgotten about when recommend floats these things up, and it's like, oh yeah, I did write about that in the past. So let's talk about how. So initially, there is a bit of setup. So you will go to recommendations in your Algolia dashboard. You will go into your config settings, and then you do have to wait for it to do some processing before you can actually start using it. So, just a few screenshots from the dashboard. You obviously pick an application. It does give you some help. One of the things that you run into first is that you are going to be asked kind of pick a type of recommend, a way to use it. Coming from a content perspective, it wasn't immediately obvious what I should pick. Luckily, I had some help from an Algolia employee who said I wanted to use the alternative recommendation. So that is what I would recommend if you're looking at adding this for a content based solution. So once you've done that, you will pick your data source. In this case, it is the data source I created from my blog to handle search. So, that part was already done. And then you're going to tell it what attributes from your index that you want to use when it comes to recommend. So for me, I used my content, I used title, I didn't use things like date and categories. I focused primarily on the content of what was in my Algolia index. So you will do this and it will take some time to process. I don't remember exactly how long it took for me. I want to say an hour, but I know that I started this, I saw it was working. I went and did some other work or whatever, came back in an hour or so and it was ready to go. And what's nice is that when you get back into your dashboard and look, it actually lets you test immediately. I loved this about the search side because it let me, ensure that things were working as I expected. Same thing with recommend. I could immediately see, based on the content that it picked and what it recommended, that it was working great. You also get nice sample code as well that you could look at to see what you would do to actually implement this in your site. So that is the setup process. The next part is the actual code. So you have multiple options there. You can use front end code via the SDK or back end via server and SDK APIs, etc. For me, what I did is I did a couple things. So when you go to my website and you load a blog post, and with caveats, and I'll explain that in a second, I am going to call a serverless function. The serverless function is going to use the Algolia API to get the recommended data, and then it's going to return it. And all this is wrapped in yummy caching. When I actually began, I did everything client side, and I realized that with my site traffic, I'd probably go beyond the free tier. And it didn't really make sense for every unique visitor to get the recommendations when it's really based on the content. So having it on the server side, having it cached, that is what worked for me. So let me actually show you the code for this. So this file, this is the JavaScript that I use on my blog. When you hit a blog post, which I do via kind of a hack by looking at the URL, I do a couple of things related to working with blog posts. One of them is do recommendations. And so I begin by getting the current path name, essentially where you are on my blog. I then have decided that I'm only going to do recommendations for posts in 2020 and later. Again, I was thinking of keeping things within the free tier. I may need to modify that in the future. So it's like only the last 4 or 5 years. But for right now, this code works and I'm happy with it for now. Ray in the future may not be as happy. But once I have figured out that I actually want to do this, I make the call to the serverless function, and then the rest of this is just HTML layout of taking what I got back, creating an HTML string, and dropping it onto the blog. The serverless function, and this is on a Netlify site. What it begins with is it looks at the query string, it looks for that URL that I sent in for the blog post. Based on that, I begin by looking at my cache. I am using Netlify blobs as a key value store. Very simple, very easy to use. If I actually have a cache, I do check the date on that. And I believe I do, yeah, 12 hours. That was kind of arbitrary, but it seemed to make sense. I can modify that cache if I wanted and store things longer. But if it's not in the cache, I need to make a request to Algolia. And the API is incredibly easy. I pass the index, the particular model for my recommendations. I set the max to 5. Again, kind of arbitrary, and I tell it what to return. I make that call against your API, And that's pretty much it. I do a little bit of manipulation on the results to make it better for the front end. I store it in my cache and then I return it. Now, that is it. If we were to look at the code for that, give me 1 second, we will see, and here's just one random blog post and all my stuff on top. I scroll down and I have recommendations. This particular blog post is talking about doing AI in Chrome and it uses RSS. So I'm not surprised at all that the recommendations are other things that I've done in RSS. I have another post about doing maps with leaflet and so forth. And if I scroll down, I can see recommendations related to some of the data that I use in this blog post. These are very, very similar to this content, and it's working absolutely perfect. So that is it. Thank you very much. If you have any questions about what I showed today, definitely reach out. And thank you very much.